Welcome back to my new video. This video, we are going to build a Restful API with Docker, Kubernetes, MongoDB. Okay, so as you can see, the MongoDB is in the cloud. It's going to be hosted in the cloud. And we are going to be using Minikube Kubernetes cluster to Dockerize our application and host it inside a single node cluster on our local machine. And the client is going to port forward the service to his local computer and then make those requests to the endpoint. Okay, so basically that is what we are going to be building. Okay, so let's jump right into the IDE. I'm going to create a new directory, which I'm going to call Restful API demo v3. Okay, so inside this, I'm going to create a couple of files. Let's start with the build.sh. The next one is going to be app.py. Also going to create another directory called manifest. Okay. And the next one that we are going to create is going to be our Docker file. And hopefully, let's create requirements.txt. Yeah, I think that's all we need for now. And with the Docker file, I've already created it, so I'm just going to paste and explain what is going on. So as you can see, we are using the base Python image. We're creating a working directory. We're copying the requirement file to this directory. We're installing all the requirement, copying all the files, exposing port 5000, and running the application. Okay, so that's all we're doing here. And also with the build.sh, I'm going to paste in the code. So I've done this over and over again. So if you don't understand some of these things, I'll encourage you to watch my last videos on Docker. So we are just building the image and calling it library flags app v108. Okay, and then pushing it to Docker Hub. Okay, so that's all we're doing here. And requirement.txt, I'm just going to copy the requirements and then explain what is going on. We installing PyMongo flags, DNS Python, and PyMongo SRV. Okay, that's all we're doing. And then with the app, we are creating create, read, update, and delete endpoints. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So I'm just going to copy some of the import and then just explain what is going on. I don't want this video to be too long because there's a lot to be done. So we have importing JSON OS, PyMongo, flags, Mongo client, Bison. Okay, so these are the main imports. And then we are calling the flags class and instantiate that. And then that is going to give us our app object. We're also creating a secret for the application, which we are referencing from this environment variable. So we'll talk more about that. So here we are going to set env for the MongoDB. Okay, so I'm going to copy that as well and explain what is going on here. So as you can see, we are storing all these environment variables, DB, Mongo host, username, password, and then we are building or formatting this long string. Okay, so if you are familiar with Python, this shouldn't be new. Okay, so that is that. The next thing we are going to be doing is calling the Mongo client, which I'm going to paste. So we are calling the Mongo client, and then we are using that object to pass in our DB, which is coming from here. And I'll show you where we are storing all these environment variable. So once we get the DB, we can call the DB on the collections. Okay, so I'm going to paste the first endpoint, which is going to be the home endpoint. And what we are doing here is that we are just dumping this information to the screen. Okay, so it's going to just say status app. Okay, this is just a simple dictionary, okay, in the form of a JSON. So we are just returning this response. Okay, so nothing complicated here. You can do whatever you want to do to the home page or the home URL. That's your choice. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to get books. Okay, I'm going to get books. I'm going to paste this and then explain what is going on. So this is our endpoint books, and it's a get request. And then we are using the DB object and say books, and that is going to be our collection in the database. So we're going to say .find. This is where we want to find all the documents in that collection called books. Okay, so once we get that, we dump that object, and then if there's any error, we return this information with the status code 500. Okay, so very straightforward. So the next endpoint we are going to look at is we want to create a book. Okay, so if we want to create a book, this is our endpoint. Okay, and it's a post method, and then we're grabbing this payload from the user, and we're saying if not data, we want to dump this information together with the status code for 400. Okay, else we want to insert that data into our database and then build this dictionary and say status is what successfully inserted. And then we want to grab the result ID from this object and then put it inside output. And then we dump the output and return this status code 201. When everything goes wrong, we want to print this JSONify message with the status code 500. Okay, very straightforward. And then we're going to read a book. And reading a book, we need an ID, a single book ID. And that ID, as you can see, we are passing that to our endpoint, and it's a get request. And once we grab that ID using the object ID, we give it to _ID and then check if the ID is invalid, then we return invalid ID provided with this status code 400. Else, we want to find that ID in our document. Once we find that ID, is going to return that data object. And then we say if it's none, we want to return book with that ID not found. And then else, we want to dump that data. Okay, very straightforward. The next thing we want to look at is how we can update a book. Okay. So I'm going to paste that, and this is the endpoint we are looking at. We are going to grab that ID and then use the put method to update records in our database. Okay, so we're using the same strategy to get the ID of that book that we want to update. If something goes wrong, we want to return this information. And then whatever we want to update, we want to grab that as a payload from the user. Okay, then we say if not data, we want to return no data provided. Okay, but if data is provided, we want to use the DB object or the collection name dot update one. We want to update that single records in our document, which is the ID. Okay, so we are passing these two dictionaries to our update one function. Okay, so there's $, you need to pass in the $. Okay, that is a syntax for MongoDB. So you say $set colon the data that we want to update. We pass it in there, and then we also check in, and then we give it to results. Okay, and then we checking if result.modify count is greater than 1. That means something was updated. Then we want to return status is successfully updated. Else we want to say nothing was updated, and then we dump that output object. Okay, this one is also very straightforward. And the last thing we want to look at is the delete. Okay, and the delete is also going to grab that ID, and then we use that single ID to look for that records in our database and then delete it based on that. So the same strategy to get the ID. And then if everything goes wrong, we say invalid ID provided. And then we use db.books.delete1. So we want to delete that single records in our document. Okay. So once we pass that to our results object, we want to check if the result.deleted count is greater than 0. It means that something was deleted. So we want to return this message. Status is successfully deleted, else document not found. So, and once we get that, we say dump that output. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to do here is to close out everything and say main, and then passing app.run. Then I'm going to debug it for development purposes, true, and then say host is 0.0.0.0, and then the port that we are targeting is 5,000. Okay, so that is all for our app. Yeah, so I'm going to upload this code to GitHub so you can still go through and practice with it. So the next thing we are going to do is to create a manifest file for deployment. I'm going to say deployment.yaml. So here we are going to put all the resources into this single YAML file. So I'm just going to show you how this is going to be done. So if you look at this carefully, I'm going to paste it in there, and you can see that the GitHub username is this, and then the name of our Docker image is library flags app v108, and then the container we are exposing is 5,000. And then the kind is for deployment. The name of the metadata is REST API. It has one replica set. Okay. And then we are going to be passing some configuration information, so which is the config map as well as the secret. Okay. So since we want to put all the objects in one YAML file, this is how you do it. You just put hyphen, 3 hyphens, and then you put the other information below or the resource below. So I'm going to paste in the config map and explain that. So here, you can see this is our host. And this is the username admin, and then the DB is going to be called library. And then this is the name of the config map, config map, which we are passing here. Okay, so that is that. What I'm going to do for secret. Secret is where we store sensitive information like password. Okay, so I'm going to paste that one also in. You see the auth name is secret, auth secret, and that is what we are referencing here, auth secret. And then the string data we are passing in is what? MongoDB password. Okay, so this is the password. It's not a strong password. So we can make a very complex one. The secret key is this is a randomly generated characters that I did on my own. You can use that. And the type is what? Opaque. So the last thing I'm going to add is the service. Okay, the service is going to allow us to expose our application to the outside world. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to paste that one in also. And you see the kind is what? Service. The name is what? REST API. It's connecting to this target port. And then the service port is also 5,000. The cluster is the service type is cluster. You can have something like a load balancer here, but we are going with the cluster IP. Okay. So I think that is that for the deployment also. So I'm just going to jump right into the terminal, and then we can see how we can deploy this application. Okay, so I'm in my terminal. I'm going to split the screen. I'm going to delete some. I'm going to say, I already have Minikube running, so I'm going to say Minikube version. You see, Minikube is running. So I'm going to say kubectl delete namespace REST API. Then I'm going to show you how we can start all over again. I'm not going to build the application because I've done it in the previous videos. If you want to build it, you can just do chmod and then run it as executable. You see the color change to red. So all you need to do is to run it for you to be able to build your Docker image and push it to Docker repository. I've done that, so I don't want to go through that process again because the video is going to be too long. Okay, so I leave that to you as an exercise. Okay, so I'm going to create a namespace, create namespace called REST API, and then I'm going to say config set context, and the context is current, and then the namespace we are referencing here is REST API. It's modifier. We can see kubectl get all. We don't have any resources, so here we want to cd into our manifest folder, and as you can see, we have the deployment file in there. So I'm just going to say kubectl apply -f and a dot, or you can specify the deployment file. Okay, like this. So if I run this, so you see it created all the resources: deployment, config map, secret, and service. So we can see get all. Okay, you see now our pod is running. Okay, this is the service REST API, and then this is the deployment REST API, and then the replica set is just 1. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say kubectl scale deployment. I'm going to scale it to 3 replica set REST API. I'm going to make it to get all. Okay, so you can see 3 ports are now running. Okay, because I scaled it to 3. Okay. So we are going to use the K9S to visualize our clusters. Okay, so you can see that the 3 ports are currently running. If I hit L on my keyboard, it's going to give me waiting for logs. And if I hit 0 on the keyboard, you can see that it's giving me the debug information. Okay, so that is running inside the container on port 5000. Okay, so that is that. So I'm going to forward this application. So we are going to use the 5000 to 5000 forward, and then the upper sign is to run it at the background. Okay, so if I do this, so we've now forwarded the port from our Kubernetes clusters to our local machine or our local computer. Okay, so now let's go and use the how do you call it? Our Postman. So this is the endpoint we are looking at. It's a post. I've created all these things ahead of time. So we're going to create books. Okay, so I'm going to say send. So once you type this information, it's /API v1 0 books, and then you select post. Just as you see on the screen. Okay, so and then you put in this payload. Okay, this is the payload. So you can add as much as information you want to add. Let's say we want to add year published. Okay, and that is going to be, let's say, 2023. Okay, we can add as much as information you want to add. So I'm just going to click on send. You see the response is what? Successfully inserted, and give her this ID. Okay, so we can also change here and say introduction to RESTful API. Okay, and then the number of pages is 120. Author is that country. Country is Ghana, and year published is 2021. Okay, so I'm going to send that. Okay, you see the response, and then I'm going to create another one. Is what? Donald Trump, and then he wrote a book. And the name of the book is Make America Great Again. Okay, so he published that book in 2019. Okay, 2019, and then the pages is 2000 pages. Okay, and his country is USA. Okay, and probably he's from his state is, let's say, New York. Okay, New York, NYC. Okay, that's his state. That's where he lives. Okay, so if I send this, you see the response is this with this object ID. So the last thing we want to add is let's say he wrote another book and it's calling it and this one is just 5 pages, and he's calling this one return and he's calling this return Trump 2024. Okay, and it's an edition of this book is, let's say, it's edition number 2. Okay, all right, so I'm just making things up. So let's send this one as well. Okay, you see, that is, see here, we don't have any schema enforcement here. So we can add as much as we want in our payload. But if you are developing a real world application, you should enforce the schema. Okay. So just to let you know. Okay. So now we want to copy this object ID. Okay, because we want to read that book. So if I pass that ID in to the endpoint, and if you notice, it's a get request, and then once I send, you see it's able to get that information for us. Addition to name is that, you see 5 pages. So that is that. So if you want to get all the books, it's also a get, and that is the endpoint we're going to use. Send, you see, in a JSON form, you see, these are all the books that I added to the database. You see, these are all the books. I think I added 1, 2, 3, 4 books currently. So if I want to update Trump's this records, so I want to update his records. Okay, I want to update this information. Probably he wrote a new version, which is edition number 3, and then he published it in 2022, and the number of pages increased to, let's say, 25. Okay. And I want to copy that object ID because that's what we want to update. Okay, so I'm going to put that in. Okay, so that is that. So we want to update these records. So if I send that, you see, status is successfully updated. Okay, so that's what we just updated. And also, if we want to delete a book, let's say we want to delete Trump's book. Okay. Let's see, we want to delete no. Let me delete this one. Okay. This is what I want to delete. The intro to Restful API. Delete. So I can pass in that object ID in, and you can see that it's a delete method. So if I send that, you see deleted, successfully deleted. Okay, so this is how you can build a RESTful API. You can retain a whole bunch of information, but we just chose to make it very simple. And once we go to our database, so you can sign up on mongodb.com and you can create a database on your own and then explore what is going on here. So if I refresh this page, you can see the library database was created for us automatically. And then the books collection tool was created. So if I click on it, you can see that in our database, we have 3 objects because we deleted 1. Okay, so you can see that we have Make America Great Again. Let me make it a bit bigger. You see, Make America Great Again. With states added. And you can see this one, addition is added. So because we don't have any schema evolution, so we can add as much as information that we want. But in real world, you want to restrict how much payload you can send, depending on your use case. Okay. So I think that is that. I'm going to upload a code to GitHub. Check in the description box. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the video. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.